Welcome back, deep divers. We're ready for another plunge into the world of literature, and this time, oh boy, we're tackling a true gem. It's Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest, and I'm so excited to get into it. We've got so much to work with here. I've got the actual play itself, of course, the full text, but also a preface where Wilde shares some of his own thoughts on the play. We've got guides to all the characters, a glossary, a thesaurus, really, the works. I think we're going to need all the help we can get. Wilde was such a master wordsmith. Absolutely. And that's what we're here for, right? To dissect this play, savor its humor, and see what brilliant insights we can uncover. Let's start with our first impressions. Just the setup itself. We're immediately thrown into this very upper-crust London scene with Algernon and Jack and, well, Ernest is the name Jack uses in the city. It's all very deceptive right from the start. And they're just tossing out these incredibly sharp and cynical observations about city life versus country life.
It's striking how right away Wilde establishes this theme of superficiality, almost like it's a game these characters are playing. And of course, who can forget the cucumber sandwiches?
Oh, that's classic. Right. Such a seemingly trivial thing, cucumber sandwiches, but Algernon makes such a point of devouring them.
Yeah.
I mean, they're clearly meant for someone else, as Augustine, no less, but he just doesn't care.
Well, there's a certain charm to his blatant disregard for social niceties, and it tells us so much about his character. He's witty, self-indulgent, and he knows how to use those cucumber sandwiches to manipulate the situation. He even claims they are for his doctor's orders.
So that charming self-indulgence of Algernon's, as you put it so well, it leads us directly to one of my favorite parts of this play. Bunburying. It's this completely made-up situation Algernon uses as an escape hatch. This imaginary friend, Bunbury, who's perpetually on the brink of death, requiring Algernon to rush off to the countryside and avoid whatever social obligations he finds tiresome in London.
Brilliant, isn't it? This invented excuse and the way he delivers it with such sincerity is hilarious.
Totally.
Yeah.
But it's not like Jack is innocent in all this. He's got his own version of Bunburying going on, right? With the invention of a fictional brother, Earnest, who supposedly lives this wild life in the city and constantly needs Jack to bail him out, giving Jack the perfect excuse to escape the confines of his country estate.
It's a wonderful parallel. Both Jack and Algernon are creating these elaborate fabrications to live double lives and escape the pressures of Victorian society. And it's in this context that we get that brilliant line from Algernon. The truth is rarely pure and never simple.
That line. It's such a perfect encapsulation of the entire play, isn't it? This dance between truth and deception, reality and fabrication, all dressed up in Wilde's signature wit.
Absolutely. And what makes it even more intriguing is that these deceptions aren't necessarily portrayed as malicious. They're almost a necessary coping mechanism for these characters to maintain some semblance of freedom within the rigid social constraints of their time. It's as if these false identities, Bunbury and the fictional Ernest, become their only avenues for true self-expression.
Exactly. It's as if they need these outlets, even if they're built on a foundation of lies. Now, of course, no comedy is complete without a hefty dose of romantic entanglement.
Right, and Wilde delivers on that front as well.
Indeed. So we have Jack pretending to be Ernest, head over heels for Gwendolen Fairfax, who just happens to be Algernon's cousin. And then you have Algernon, who's become quite smitten with the idea of Jack's ward, Cecily Cardew.
Cicely, the young, beautiful, and somewhat naive heiress living under Jack's guardianship in the country. Algernon has clearly been paying attention to Jack's descriptions of her. And of course, he sees an opportunity, creating an obstacle for Jack in a wonderfully roundabout way.
Oh, it's so deliciously manipulative, right? Algernon, with a straight face, insists that this Cecily question. Remember, Jack has been adamantly claiming not to know anyone by that name needs to be sorted out before he can consent to Jack's marriage to Gwendolen. It's all a ploy to delay things and get himself down to the country estate where Cecily is.
But before he gets the chance to disappear off to the country, we have the entrance of Lady Bracknell.
Oh, she's formidable, isn't she?
She's absolutely a force to be reckoned with, and she arrives with a bang.
And immediately takes over the entire scene, doesn't she? She's the embodiment of Victorian propriety, and her interrogation of Jack about his suitability as a husband for Gwendolen is just pure comedic gold.
It's Wilde at his satirical best. He uses Lady Bracknell to highlight the absurdity of these societal expectations, focusing on lineage, wealth, social standing. It's all so utterly ridiculous, yet presented with such seriousness.
It's like she can't even fathom that love might be a factor in any of this. I mean, the questions she asks are mind-boggling. 130,000 pounds in the funds, is that really the measure of a good husband?
Apparently, in Lady Bracknell's world, it is. And then there's the whole issue of Jack's parentage, or rather, the lack thereof.
Oh, that's a classic.
Yeah.
Right, found as a baby in a handbag. Can you imagine? It's a backstory worthy of the most outlandish melodrama, but Wilde uses it to highlight the hypocrisy and utter absurdity of Lady Bracknell's world.
It's brilliant how he turns this potentially tragic backstory into this wonderfully farcical element, poking fun at the obsession with lineage and social respectability, and the fact that he was named after a train ticket. It's just too much.
It's just perfect. Now, meanwhile, back in the country estate, we have Gwendolen arriving unexpectedly.
Unannounced and ready for romance.
Yes. And she immediately encounters Cecily, who, up until this point, has been living this rather sheltered existence. And despite never having met before, these two young women form a bond, albeit a slightly competitive one.
Well, they do share a rather unique commonality, their infatuation with the name Ernest.
It's more than an infatuation, it's almost an obsession, isn't it? They've both convinced themselves that they're destined to marry a man named Ernest.
And it's this shared obsession that sets the stage for the ultimate comedic showdown, because of course at this precise moment, both our Ernests arrive at the country house. Jack and Algernon, each fully committed to their assumed identity, ready to woo their respective love interests.
Oh, the chaos. Wow. The misunderstandings, the farcical brilliance of it all. And it just keeps escalating, doesn't it? Because then we have the diary entries.
Oh yes, the diaries.
Both Gwendolen and Cecily have been diligently documenting their supposed courtships and engagements to Ernest in their diaries, conveniently at different times, creating a timeline that simply doesn't add up.
Yeah.
And Cecily, oh, she takes it a step further. Not only is she recording these fictional events, she's actively writing letters to herself, pretending they're from Ernest.
It's a wonderful illustration of the power of imagination, particularly when it comes to matters of the heart. Cecily has created this entire romantic narrative, this ideal Ernest, and she's completely invested in it, even though it exists only in her mind.
And it's all unfolding against the backdrop of this completely ridiculous argument between Jack and Algernon, who are now engaged in this petty squabble over muffins and tea cake. It's like their entire world revolves around who gets to eat which pastry.
It's classic Wilde again. This juxtaposition of the trivial with the genuinely emotional, and the way he uses these seemingly insignificant details, the muffins and tea cakes, to highlight the larger absurdities of their situation. Oh, and their determination to be christened Ernest to further perpetuate their charade. It just adds another layer of ridiculousness to it all.
But just when you think the situation can't possibly get any more tangled, Lady Bracknell makes her triumphant return.
Talk about throwing a wrench into the works.
She arrives, completely unannounced, of course, and immediately throws everyone's plans into disarray. Her pronouncements on mental decay and physical weakness, it's like she's stepping right out of a Victorian etiquette manual, but delivered with such conviction that you can't help but laugh.
She's completely oblivious to the genuine emotions swirling around her, too focused on maintaining what she considers to be the correct social order.
And then there's poor Bunbury. Even in his fictional demise, he manages to cause more trouble. Algernon announces that Bunbury has, sadly, passed away. But the cause of death is quite particular, being found out by his doctors. It's another one of those brilliantly subtle digs at the consequences of living a lie, even a well-intentioned one.
It's as if Bunbury, this symbol of escapism and fabricated freedom, simply couldn't survive in the face of truth. But as one deception ends, another, far more significant one is about to be revealed.
Because Lady Bracknell's sharp eyes fall upon Miss Prism, the governess, and it's like a bolt of lightning. She recognizes her instantly, and then the interrogation begins.
And what an interrogation it is. Lady Bracknell's memory, usually so focused on social trivialities, suddenly digs up this incident from decades past, the case of a missing baby from a very specific address, no less.
And then, just when you think you can't handle any more drama, Jack enters, clutching this very distinctive black leather handbag. The very handbag that Miss Prism, rather carelessly it seems, had misplaced all those years ago.
That handbag becomes the key to unlocking the entire mystery. It's like something out of a Victorian detective novel, but infused with Wilde's signature wit. The way Miss Prism identifies the bag through those incredibly specific and slightly absurd details the omnibus accident, the stain from a temperance beverage. It's both hilarious and suspenseful at the same time.
And then the truth comes tumbling out. Jack reveals, to everyone's astonishment, that he was the baby in that handbag.
And he immediately jumps to the conclusion that Miss Prism is his long-lost mother.
Which, of course, she vehemently denies. It's pure chaos, but beautifully orchestrated chaos.
The way Wilde blends these farcical elements with a genuine mystery and then resolves it all in this wonderfully improbable way is simply brilliant. And of course, we get the ultimate revelation. Jack is actually Algernon's older brother.
And his real name? Ernest John Moncrief. So all this time, Gwendolen and Cecily's insistence on marrying a man named Ernest was, in this ridiculously roundabout way, entirely accurate.
It's a perfect resolution, right? The name Earnest, which has been the source of so much deception and confusion, ends up being the key to solving everything. It even secures Lady Bracknell's approval, though I'm sure she'll never admit it outright.
So as we come up for air after this deep dive into the importance of being earnest, what are our key takeaways? Well, first and foremost, Wilde's play is this incredibly sharp and hilarious critique of Victorian society.
Exactly. It skewers their obsession with triviality, their emphasis on outward appearances over genuine emotion, and the utterly ridiculous rules that govern their lives.
But it's also much more than just social commentary, right? It's about the complexities of identity and deception, the ways we construct and present ourselves to the world, and the consequences of those choices.
Absolutely. And it highlights the power of wit in language to both uphold and subvert societal expectations. And of course, we can't forget about bun burying. This brilliant invention has become this universal term for creating those convenient alter egos that allow us to escape from the pressures and expectations of everyday life.
And it's such a relevant concept, even today. It makes you think about all the ways we, in the modern world, engage in our own versions of bun bearing. Maybe through carefully curated online personas or the way we present ourselves on social media. It's this fascinating exploration of the human desire to escape, to create a separate reality, even if it's just temporary.
And it leaves us with this final thought to ponder. In a world that often prioritizes practicality and straightforwardness, what is the role of earnestness, that genuine sincerity? And is there a place for a little bit of carefully constructed escape, even if it's built on a foundation of witty deception? Something to think about until our next deep dive.
Until then, happy reading, everyone.